The great throne hall of the Zerath Dominion glowed with cold blue light. The walls were made of black crystal, polished to mirror perfection. Sharp pillars rose high like spears, and at the end of the long chamber sat Queen Asera, ruler of the largest empire in the Orion Arm. Her eyes, deep violet and calm, watched her generals kneel before her. Each one carried the scars of hundreds of battles. They were killers, conquerors, veterans of 1,000 victories. Yet tonight their faces looked pale. Outside the hall, thunder rolled through the metal sky. The sound of orbital cannons echoed from the clouds above the capital. The Zerath Empire was at war again, as always, but something was different this time. A low voice broke the silence. "Your Majesty," said General Tarth, bowing deeply, "we have received a final transmission from the 9th Fleet. They are gone." The Queen's silver crown tilted slightly as she stared at him. "Gone?" she asked. Her voice was calm, but the air in the room grew colder. "Yes, Majesty," Tarth said, swallowing hard. "All ships lost. No survivors." Another general, her armor cracked from old battles, stepped forward. "The human resistance has grown bolder. Their leader uses strange tactics. We thought he commanded a small force, but he outsmarted the fleet." Asera's eyes narrowed. "One man destroyed an entire fleet?" The generals exchanged uneasy looks. Tarth cleared his throat. "Not one man, Majesty. But his name appears in every report. Every world where he fights. Falls silent after his victory. Even our spies cannot locate him." He hesitated, then added softly, "The humans call him Captain Marcus Hale." The name echoed through the throne hall. The guards standing along the pillars shifted their feet. Even the torches flickered. For a long moment the Queen said nothing. Her gaze drifted toward the holographic map beside her throne. Blue and red lights blinked across the galactic sectors. One red mark pulsed faintly. Sector Riven 3, the latest battlefield. She had heard human names before. They were short, rough, unrefined. But this one carried a strange weight. "Marcus Hale," she repeated slowly. "Tell me what he did." Tarth raised a trembling hand. A holo display appeared above the table. It showed a burning planet, the remains of shattered cruisers drifting in orbit. "The 9th Fleet entered Riven 3 with full superiority," Tarth explained. 2 dreadnoughts, 6 destroyers, a carrier group. The humans had only a colony and a few ground forces. But within 3 hours our ships were ambushed. Communications jammed. Ground defenses appeared where none were detected before. Then our flagship detonated from within. "Sabotage?" the Queen asked. "No, Majesty," said the general beside him. "Reports say human infiltrators planted false AI beacons. When our ships tried to communicate, they were redirected into their own firewalls. Our weapons turned against us. Then orbital mines hidden in the debris field destroyed the escape ships." The Queen leaned forward slightly. "And this Marcus Hale, was he there?" Tarth nodded. "Yes, he led the human ground force. Our final transmission shows him walking through the battlefield after the fight. He carried the flag of the United Earth Command." He looked at our camera drone and said. Tarth paused as if afraid to continue. "Speak," the Queen ordered. He said, "Tell your queen the war is far from over. Tell her humanity doesn't kneel." Then he shot the drone. Silence filled the hall again. The Queen rose from her throne, her tall frame shining under the pale light. The movement of her armor made a soft metallic hum. For a moment she simply stared at the ceiling, where the banners of conquered worlds hung in long rows. Each banner represented a race her empire had crushed. Humans were supposed to be the next. Asera turned back to her generals. "So this Hale," she said slowly. "He is another human hero. I have seen their kind before. They shout, they burn, they die. Their bravery is noise, not power." But Tarth shook his head. "Forgive me, Majesty, but this one is different. He doesn't fight like them. He studies our patterns. He knows how our ships think. He uses our own strategy against us." Another general whispered. "The soldiers fear his name now. When our troops hear Hale, they hesitate." The Queen's eyes flashed dangerously. "Fear is weakness. Replace those who fear him." "Yes, Majesty," Tarth said quickly, bowing low. Yet even as he spoke, Asera noticed something strange in the room. The usual arrogance of her council was gone. The warriors who had destroyed entire species now refused to meet her eyes. This name, Marcus Hale, had done what no enemy weapon ever could. It had made her empire doubt itself. Later that night, when the council was dismissed, Asera walked alone through the royal gardens that stretched beneath the crystal domes. Bioluminescent plants glowed softly. The air was filled with the scent of iron and ozone. She paused by the reflecting pool. In the still water, her reflection stared back, tall, elegant, and strong. Yet there was a faint shadow under her eyes. For the first time in many years, she felt a thought she hated. What if this human truly is different? She spoke quietly to the guard beside her. Bring me every report on this Hale, his battles, his history, everything. The guard bowed and hurried away. The queen turned her gaze to the stars. In the far distance, tiny lights marked the border of human space. It was small compared to her empire. A cluster of weak worlds clinging to survival, and yet they fought like beasts cornered by fire. Asera's lips curved slightly. Not a smile, something sharper. Let us see what drives you, human. Hours later, the intelligence files arrived. Asera sat at a long table in her private chamber, the glow of a dozen holograms lighting her face. Each one contained a fragment of the man called Marcus Hale, born on a small colony world, former engineer turned soldier, survived the fall of Mars, escaped a Zerath labor camp during the early years of war, then somehow, used the camp's remaining equipment to build communication relays and free 2 nearby human outposts. Within months, his small band of survivors became a resistance army. He was not born into power. Not enhanced, not genetically modified, just human, ordinary. Yet his record showed something rare. 0 failed missions. Every battle he joined ended with the same pattern. Zerath defeat. Asera studied his image. A tall man, sunburned skin, gray eyes that held no hate. His expression was calm, steady, like a man who had seen too much but refused to break. He doesn't even look dangerous, she whispered to herself. But the numbers said otherwise. She turned to her advisor, an old strategist named Varn who stood at her side. Why do my fleets fall to this one human? She asked quietly. Varn hesitated. Majesty, I think it is because he does not fight to win battles. He fights to make us bleed time, ships, and hope. Every trap he sets is meant to remind us that we are not invincible. Asera leaned back in her chair. So he uses fear as a weapon. Not fear, Majesty, Varn said softly. He uses belief. His soldiers believe in him the way we fear you. The queen's eyes narrowed at the comparison, but she did not answer. The next morning, Asera summoned her council again. The hall filled with the sound of marching boots and clattering armor. When all were present, she stood from her throne. This human has become a symbol, she announced. Symbols are powerful, but they can be broken. She raised one hand. Send the Crimson Shroud, the generals gasped. The Crimson Shroud was her personal assassination corps. Silent killers who had ended rebellions and toppled rival kings. Majesty, to send them against a single soldier, Tarth began, is a waste? She interrupted. No, it is necessary. End this Hale. Burn his legend before it spreads further. The generals bowed low. At once, Majesty. As they departed, Asera looked again at the holographic image of Marcus Hale. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw his gray eyes turn toward her, as if he could see her through the screen. She shook off the feeling. You are just a man, she whispered, and men can be killed. Yet somewhere deep within her the unease remained. Quiet, steady, and cold. That night, the queen stood once more at the window of her palace, staring into the void of space. The stars looked peaceful from this distance, but she knew better. Somewhere out there, a human soldier was waiting for her empire to make its next move. Asera's hand rested lightly on the glass. Let the galaxy remember, she murmured. The Zerath Dominion does not kneel to any human. But the stars did not answer. They only flickered faintly, as if warning her that the war had already changed, and that the name she had spoken that day would echo far longer than she could imagine. The rain fell hard over the ruins of Outpost Vurin, turning the ash and metal into gray mud. Between broken tanks and shattered towers, soldiers in worn armor moved silently, their helmets glowing faint blue in the dark. They carried rifles that hummed faintly with power, scanning every shadow for movement. At the center of the ruined city stood a man in a tattered command coat. His armor was scratched, his left sleeve torn, and a scar ran across his cheek like a pale lightning strike. His name was Captain Marcus Hale, the soldier who should have died 100 times but never did. He looked up at the falling rain and exhaled slowly. The wind carried the distant sound of thunder and the faint crackle of comms static. His troops waited around him, tired but alert. They had survived another battle and the enemy had retreated. Again. A young corporal approached, wiping rain from his visor. "Sir, no more hostiles in the area." "We've secured the site," Hale nodded. "Good work. Any word from orbit?" "None, sir. The relay's still jammed. Probably Zerath interference." "Then we'll fix it ourselves," Hale said. His voice was calm but carried quiet authority. Every soldier who heard it seemed to stand taller. He turned toward the ruins of a comm tower, its frame half melted from plasma fire. "We rebuild this now. I want transmission capability in 2 hours." The corporal hesitated. "Sir, with respect, the equipment's fried." "We don't have— Use the enemy parts," Hale interrupted. "They left enough wreckage for us to work with. If it can send a signal, I'll make it talk." There was no anger in his tone, just certainty. It was this certainty that made his soldiers follow him into the impossible. As his team began working, Hale walked through the battlefield. He passed the bodies of Zerath soldiers, tall reptilian figures with dark scales and silver armor. Their weapons still smoked in the mud. He paused beside one of them, kneeling to inspect the weapon's design. "New plasma configuration," he muttered. "They're adapting faster." Behind him, Lieutenant Farah, his second-in-command, approached. "You really think they'll keep coming after one loss?" "They will," Hale said. "And next time they won't underestimate us." Farah sighed. "They sent the 9th Fleet and we destroyed it. You think they'll risk another one?" Hale looked up at the burning sky. "Yes, because I would." She stared at him for a moment, realizing he wasn't speaking from pride but from understanding. He knew the enemy because he thought like them. Hours later, when the comm tower crackled to life again, Hale stood beside the console. Static filled the air, then a weak voice came through. "Command, this is Relay Sigma, reading your signal. Confirm your identity." Hale pressed the transmitter. "This is Captain Marcus Hale, 3rd Resistance Division. Riven 3 is secure." "Repeat, Riven 3 is secure." The line went silent for a second. Then another voice, older and calm, replied, "Captain Hale, we received the report. The 9th Zerath Fleet is destroyed?" "Confirmed," Hale said, a pause. "Do you have casualties?" "Too many," he said quietly. "But the colony stands." There was another long pause. Then the voice spoke again, softer now. "Understood. Earth Command sends its gratitude. You've done what no one thought possible." Hale closed his eyes briefly. Gratitude meant little when people kept dying. "Tell Command this isn't over. The Zerath will strike back. Harder." The line crackled again before going silent. Hale stood there for a moment, listening to the hum of the rain on the tower. He knew the voice on the other end would never understand what it cost to win here. Every victory left scars deeper than the last. That night, the soldiers gathered around small fires in the ruins. The air smelled of rain, oil, and smoke. Some laughed quietly, sharing dry rations. Others just stared at the flames, lost in thought. Hale walked among them, checking wounds, speaking softly to the wounded, offering water, fixing rifles by hand. He never asked for rest, never asked for praise. To his soldiers, he wasn't a hero. He was the reason they were still alive. "Sir?" Farah said as he approached. "The men keep asking if it's true. Did we really destroy the entire fleet?" Hale gave a small smile. "If the wreckage is still burning, it's real enough." She chuckled, but her face grew serious again. "And what happens when they send more? We can't fight forever." He looked into the flames, his expression unreadable. "We don't have to fight forever. We just have to fight until they realize we won't stop." Far across the galaxy, in the dark command halls of the Zerath Dominion, Queen Asera watched the same reports. She saw Hale's name appear again and again, attached to losses she could barely explain. Her assassins were already on their way to end him, silent and invisible. But Hale didn't know that yet. On Riven 3, the next day dawned red with dust storms. The humans had barely slept. Hale woke before sunrise and walked up the ridge overlooking the valley. His small command base stood below, built from the ruins of Zerath machinery. Human ingenuity at its best, turning enemy weapons into tools of survival. He placed his binoculars against his eyes, scanning the horizon. Something felt wrong. The wind carried a faint metallic scent. He had learned to trust his instincts. Those instincts had kept him alive this long. Farah, he called through his comm. Any heat signatures to the east? None, sir. Scanners are clear. Double check. She sounded confused but obeyed. A moment later her voice returned, sharp and urgent. Sir, you were right. Multiple cloaked signatures. They're close, too close. Hale's eyes hardened. Wake everyone. Now. By the time the alarm sounded, the assassins had already arrived. Shadows moved through the smoke, nearly invisible. The Crimson Shroud, elite killers bred in silence. Their armor absorbed light. Their movements were smooth and fluid, like predators from another world. But Hale was already waiting.
He had known something like this would come.
He had prepared for it days ago. As the first assassin leapt from the ridge, a hidden mine detonated, throwing fire into the air. The rest of the shroud spread out, but more traps followed. Tripwires, pressure charges, EMP grenades. The ground itself had become his weapon. Positions, Hale shouted, raising his rifle. His soldiers opened fire with precision, cutting through the storm of shadows. The assassins moved fast, almost too fast for human eyes. One reached Hale's flank, blade flashing toward his neck. But he ducked, rolled, and fired a point-blank shot through its chest. The alien fell without a sound. Farah shouted, "They're surrounding us!" "Then we break through," Hale said. "Form defensive line, Sector 3. Explosions lit the valley like lightning. The air filled with the sound of plasma fire and shouting. In the middle of it, Hale moved like a force of nature, calm, deliberate, unstoppable. He gave orders between bursts of fire, guiding his people like pieces on a chessboard. "Now," he shouted. A hidden turret unfolded from the ground, firing a stream of energy that tore through the remaining assassins. Within minutes, silence returned. The last of the Crimson Shroud lay broken in the mud. When the smoke cleared, Hale stood among the bodies. His armor was burned, his rifle empty. He stared down at the insignia on one of the fallen assassins, a crimson mark shaped like a claw. He picked up a small data chip from the corpse and slipped it into his wrist console. The hologram that appeared showed a royal seal he recognized from old intelligence files, the Zerath Queen's crest. Farah walked up beside him, breathing hard. "What is that?" "A message," Hale said quietly. He pressed the control, and a distorted voice filled the air. "To the human called Marcus Hale. You have interfered with the destiny of the Zerath Dominion. You are hereby marked for elimination by order of Queen Asera." The recording ended. The air felt heavy. Farah whispered, "The Queen herself sent them after you." Hale looked at the burning horizon. "Then the Queen just made this personal." He turned to his soldiers, who were watching silently. "Pack everything. We move at dusk. They know where we are now, but where will we go?" someone asked. Hale's voice was calm, steady as ever. "Into the storm. That's where we do our best work." That night, as the resistance convoy moved through the wasteland, the soldiers whispered among themselves. They spoke of the assassins, of the battle, of how their captain had once again led them through death and fire. One young private asked, "Why do they fear him so much?" An older sergeant replied, "Because he doesn't fight like a human. He fights like something else, something they can't predict." At the front of the convoy, Hale drove silently, the wind howling against the armored transport. In the distance, lightning flashed across the sky. He didn't smile, didn't speak, but his eyes burned with quiet determination. He knew the war was far from over. He knew Queen Asera would send more. But deep down, a strange thought grew inside him. Maybe she's finally starting to understand what humans really are. Far away, in her throne room of glass and shadow, Queen Asera received the report of her assassin's failure. For a moment, she simply stared at the empty transmission. Her voice was low and controlled. "All of them?" "None returned, Majesty," said General Tarth. The Queen's claws tightened around the edge of her throne. "Then send the fleet. Burn that world." She paused, her expression unreadable. "And bring me everything we know about Marcus Hale." As the general hurried away, she whispered to herself, "You should have died, human. But perhaps death does not claim your kind so easily." The royal war hall of the Zerath Dominion was silent, except for the slow hum of the holographic map that floated in the center. Red and blue lights blinked across it, each dot representing fleets, planets, and the shifting front lines of a galaxy at war. Queen Asera stood at the edge of the map, her hands clasped behind her back. Her violet eyes stared at a single blinking blue point labeled Riven 3. That was where her elite assassins, the Crimson Shroud, had gone. None had returned. Her generals stood around the map, afraid to speak. Even the air in the chamber felt heavy. Finally, General Tarth broke the silence. Majesty, all communication with the Shroud has been lost. Their last signal indicated heavy resistance. Asera didn't turn to look at him. Heavy resistance? Against one man? Tarth swallowed. It seems he anticipated them, Majesty. There were traps, defensive lines. He knew they were coming. The Queen slowly turned her head. Her gaze was cold enough to freeze air. Are you saying the Crimson Shroud failed? No one answered. She stepped forward and pressed a clawed finger against the hologram. The blue light of Riven 3 expanded into a detailed map of the planet. Valleys, mountains, human colonies. You all told me humans were primitive, weak, predictable. She looked around the table. So tell me, how does a primitive soldier outthink the best minds in my empire? Tarth opened his mouth to answer, but stopped. His throat felt dry. Another general finally spoke. Majesty, perhaps we underestimated them. This Captain Hale, he has fought us for years. He knows our methods. Asera's voice was soft but dangerous. Then perhaps we should teach him something new. That evening she sat alone in her private chamber. The glow of the stars filtered through the glass ceiling above her. She held a small data crystal in her hand, recovered from the Shroud's last transmission. When she placed it into her console, a recording appeared. It was blurry at first. Then a human face came into focus. Dirty, scarred, but calm. Marcus Hale. He stood among burning wreckage. Behind him lay the bodies of her assassins. You sent your best? He said quietly. They fought with honor, but they never understood humans. He paused, then looked straight into the camera. You think victory comes from fear? You're wrong. It comes from standing up when fear tells you to kneel. Tell your queen, if she wants me, I'll be waiting. The recording ended. For a long moment, Asera did not move. Her reflection glowed faintly in the black glass of the console. Something stirred inside her chest, a mixture of anger and something she couldn't name. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever survived to. She whispered to the empty room. You are a fool, human. You think defiance makes you strong? It makes you doomed. But as she said it, the words didn't feel certain. The next morning, Asera called for her full war council. When they entered the grand hall, they were surprised to see her already standing before the star map, armor on, her crown replaced with a battle helm. She rarely wore it herself. It meant she was going to war. The time for games is over, she said, her voice echoing through the hall. This Marcus Hale will not be hunted by assassins. He will be crushed by an army. The generals exchanged uneasy glances. Majesty, said Tarth carefully, we have lost 2 fleets already in that region. If we commit another full strike, our borders will weaken. I do not care about borders, Asera said sharply. I care about order. That man has made a mockery of my empire. I will not have my name whispered in fear of a human. She raised her hand, and the hologram shifted to display a massive formation of ships. You will assemble the first Imperial Armada. Every dreadnought, every destroyer, every troop carrier. I will lead the attack myself. The room went dead silent. Tarth stepped forward. Your Majesty, you would risk your life for one soldier? Asera's eyes blazed. No, General. I will end a symbol. Far across the galaxy on Riven 3, Marcus Hale stood beside a ridge overlooking the valley where his forces were rebuilding their base. He could feel the air vibrating with quiet tension. Ever since the failed assassination, his soldiers had been restless. They knew revenge was coming. Lieutenant Farah joined him, her eyes scanning the horizon. You think they'll come soon? They already have, Hale said. She frowned. You mean, they sent the assassins. They failed. That means she'll take it personally now. She'll bring everything she has. Farah hesitated. Then what do we do? Hale watched the clouds above, where faint flashes of light marked the movement of ships in orbit. We make her regret it. He turned to face her fully. We can't match their numbers, but we can make them pay for every meter of ground. Every time they think they understand us, we change the rules. Farah smiled faintly. That sounds like suicide. Only if we stop thinking, he said. And I'm not done thinking yet. By nightfall, Riven 3 became a world of silent preparation. Drones carried mines into canyons. Engineers buried energy cells under layers of rock. Hale personally supervised the placement of old satellite cores, converted into traps that could mimic fleet signals. His soldiers followed his orders with quiet focus. None of them truly believed they would survive the coming assault, but none planned to run. They fought because of him. Later, Farah found him sitting beside a flickering console, studying an old Zerath battle plan. The glow from the screen lit his tired face. "Sir," she said softly, "why do you think she's doing this? The Queen. Why chase one man?" Hale didn't look up. "Because she's proud, and pride makes leaders blind. She thinks killing me will make humans kneel again." He leaned back in his chair. "But the thing about humans, Farah, we don't kneel. Not even to gods." Days passed. Then the sky broke open. It started as a low vibration in the ground, then a flash of light that turned night into day. The Zerath Armada had arrived. Dozens of massive ships entered orbit, each the size of a city. Their cannons glowed like suns. The storm of their engines painted the sky red. Hale stood in the command bunker, watching the screens. "So she came herself," he said softly. Farah looked at the data. "We're outnumbered 100 to 1. Hale nodded. "Then we'll just have to win 100 times. He activated the base's hidden transmitters. "This is Captain Hale to all ground units. They're here. Remember your training. Remember who you're fighting for. We don't fight for glory. We fight because we're still breathing. Make them remember why they should fear that." A roar of voices answered through the comms. "For Earth, in Two. Orbit." Queen Asera stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Vengeance of Stars. Through the massive viewport, she saw the planet below, small, scarred, yet defiant. Her second officer approached. "Majesty, the fleet is ready. Orders?" Asera's eyes locked on Riven 3. "Begin the bombardment." The first wave of plasma struck the surface, tearing through mountains and valleys. Explosions lit the night. For a moment, it looked like the planet itself was dying. But then something strange happened. From the ashes of the bombardment, hundreds of false energy signatures appeared. To the fleet's sensors, it looked as if dozens of human warships were launching from the surface. "Majesty," the officer shouted. "Multiple enemy vessels detected. Unknown configuration." Asera frowned. "Impossible. They don't have that technology." "Readings confirm, Majesty. They're launching. Fire on all of them," she ordered. The Armada unleashed its cannons, but every ship they targeted exploded too easily. The readings flickered and vanished. Then Asera understood. "Decoys," she whispered. Before she could react, explosions rippled across the fleet. Mines, hidden in orbit, detonated in perfect sequence, tearing through the outer ships. Hale's voice came over the intercepted frequency, calm, controlled, almost respectful. "You brought your empire to my doorstep, Your Majesty. Welcome to Riven 3. Asera clenched her fists. "He dares mock me." But as she watched her fleet burn, something colder replaced her anger. Realization. Every step she had taken, every order she had given had been predicted. He had drawn her here on purpose. Her pride had led her into his trap. On the surface, Hale stood in the storm, wind whipping his coat. The sky above burned with falling debris. His soldiers cheered as enemy ships fell like meteors. Farah approached breathless. "Sir, it's working. They're retreating." Hale shook his head. "Not yet. The Queen's too proud to retreat." He looked up at the burning sky. "She'll stay until she believes I'm dead. Farah frowned. And when she realizes you're not? He smiled faintly. Then she'll learn the real meaning of fear. Back aboard her ship, Queen Asera stood motionless as reports came in. Hundreds of ships lost, communications in chaos. Her generals pleaded for retreat, but she ignored them. Her thoughts were far away, echoing with the humans' words. We don't kneel. For the first time in her life, she understood what they meant. It wasn't arrogance, it was conviction. She turned away from the window, her expression unreadable. Prepare the second wave, she said quietly. And this time, I will face him myself. That night, as Riven 3 burned and both armies prepared for the next phase, Hale sat beside a cracked console, staring at the endless storm outside. He knew she was coming. He could feel it. For the first time, he allowed himself a small laugh. The Queen's making her mistake, he whispered. He looked toward the stars. She's coming down here. The first light of dawn barely broke through the thick clouds over Riven 3, but the ground was already alive with motion. Soldiers moved with quiet urgency, preparing for the next wave of the Zerath assault. Captain Marcus Hale stood at the ridge overlooking the valley, scanning the horizon. Every inch of the terrain was now rigged for battle. Hidden turrets, mines, and decoys carefully placed to channel the enemy where he wanted them. Lieutenant Farah joined him, eyes narrowing at the faint shimmer of alien shields rising on the distant mountains. Sir, she said softly, they're moving again. I can see their vanguard. This time, it's massive. It's the Queen herself. Hale did not flinch. He adjusted his binoculars, tracking the movement. Good, he said. Let her come. Let them all come. It's easier to fight them in the storm I've prepared. His soldiers were weary, but they trusted him. Every plan he made, every order he gave had kept them alive so far. They followed without question. Far above, in orbit, Queen Asera's flagship, Vengeance of Stars, glowed like a predator ready to strike. Her violet eyes scanned the world below. She had spent weeks planning this attack, bringing the full might of the Zerath First Armada. Every dreadnought, every fleet carrier, every combat ship. Millions of soldiers ready to crush one planet. She could feel her pulse quicken. This was not just another battle. This was personal. Marcus Hale had humiliated her assassins, and now she would see him face her wrath directly. Prepare the drop units, she ordered. Send the assault teams down. I will oversee the engagement myself. Her generals hesitated. Majesty, with all due respect, the planet is heavily fortified. Hale's traps. I don't care, she said sharply. The planet belongs to the Zerath Dominion. I will not be mocked again. On the surface, Hale moved among his troops, giving last-minute orders. Remember the plan, he said calmly. She will bring overwhelming force. That's why we'll make her pay for every meter of ground. Channel them. Force them to take the paths we've prepared. Every trap, every mine, every turret. Use it to turn their power into weakness. A young soldier, barely 19, looked up at him. Sir, why do you keep risking so much? She's bringing the entire fleet. Hale's eyes softened, just slightly. Because if we don't fight, they will take everything. Not just this planet, but every human world. And because, he paused, I can't let fear decide what humans are capable of. The soldiers exchanged looks. They understood him better than anyone else. This wasn't about victory. It was about proving that humanity could stand against an empire that thought itself invincible. The first wave of Zerath troops descended from the orbiting ships. Massive drop pods tore through the clouds, striking the ground with precision. The storm of the descent stirred dust, ash, and debris. The alien soldiers poured out, their claws and armor glinting under the faint light. Hale watched carefully, signaling his troops. Hidden turrets fired in coordinated volleys. Mines detonated beneath enemy formations. Decoy structures simulated reinforcements, drawing the alien forces into traps. Within minutes, chaos spread through the Zerath ranks. Explosions lit the sky. Plasma beams cut through the air, turning armored soldiers into molten shards. The alien soldiers were disciplined, highly trained, and lethal, but they were predictable. Hale had studied their methods for years. He knew how they thought, how they moved, and how to manipulate them. Queen Asera watched from orbit as the first reports reached her. Impossible, she whispered. Sensors showed massive losses in what should have been secure zones. Her tactical teams were being funneled into ambushes, crushed before they could reach the humans' main positions. She clenched her claws. Hale has planned this. He has predicted my every move. Tarth stepped forward. Majesty, perhaps we should— No, she said coldly. We escalate. Bring down the full fleet. He cannot escape this. She activated the planetary bombardment system, a network of orbital cannons designed to level continents. Bolts of energy rained down on Riven 3, carving deep trenches in the mountains. Fires spread across the valley, smoke rising into the sky like a dark storm. But Hale was ready. The bombardment triggered hidden channels and countermeasures he had built beneath the surface. Rock collapses and engineered explosions deflected most of the energy, sparing the main base and funneling enemy troops into kill zones. The ground battle intensified. Hale moved among his soldiers like a conductor of destruction, directing fire, coordinating turrets, and personally taking down the fastest alien attackers with precise shots. Farah covered him, picking off enemies that broke through the lines. At one point, a massive Zereth war machine, a walking siege tank, plowed into the valley. Hale ran toward it, pulling a small device from his belt. He attached it to the machine's leg. 1 minute, he said calmly. He sprinted back behind a hill just as the device detonated, flipping the war machine onto its back and immobilizing it. The soldiers cheered. Captain, Farah yelled, you can't possibly fight all of them. Hale turned to her with a faint smile. I don't have to. They fight each other now. The traps and countermeasures forced the alien soldiers into chaotic patterns. Confused and disorganized, they began to fall. Every step Hale had predicted unfolded perfectly. Above them, Asera's personal assault teams landed. The air shimmered with her energy shields. She moved like a shadow through the battlefield, cutting down anyone in her path with unmatched precision. But even she was slowed by the traps. Tripwires, plasma nets, and hidden explosions forced her into paths she had not chosen. Each step reminded her that this human was no ordinary soldier. Every trap seemed designed with one purpose: to humiliate her pride. She paused at a ridge, surveying the chaos below. Soldiers, both human and Zerath, were locked in fierce combat. The fires of explosions lit their faces. In the center of it all, Hale moved calmly, almost untouched. Her violet eyes narrowed. How can one man command so much? She whispered. Hale noticed her presence from the ridge. Through the chaos, he saw the shimmer of her energy shield. He did not flinch. Instead, he activated a long-range targeting array, aimed carefully at the surrounding terrain. A massive series of detonations shook the ground beneath Asera's troops. Rocks and debris fell like rain, forcing her and her soldiers to scatter. Every attempt she made to advance was met with another trap, each one calculated and timed perfectly. Hale's calm voice came over the comm system, loud enough for some of her soldiers to hear. You brought the storm to my world. Now you dance in it, Asera's heart pounded. The human's voice was calm, almost mocking, but it was precise. He wasn't afraid. He was always 2 steps ahead. The battle raged for hours. The Zereth First Armada sent waves after waves, but Hale and his soldiers adapted continuously. He anticipated their strategies, exploited weaknesses, and used their own technology against them. Every assault they launched was turned into a trap. By mid-afternoon, the first major retreat began. Entire formations of elite alien soldiers were forced back toward the mountains, suffering heavy casualties. Reports reached Asera. Her fleet had lost over 30% of its drop units. The Queen's expression hardened. Enough! She raised her clawed hand and activated a planet-wide EMP strike, hoping to disable Hale's traps. Bolts of energy cut across the landscape, frying sensors, weapons, and machinery. For a moment, the humans hesitated. Hale, however, had anticipated this too. Backup systems online, he muttered. Hidden channels rerouted power, bringing some turrets back online while soldiers used manual firing stations. The counterattack began immediately. As night fell, Hale stood on the ridge looking at the battlefield below. Fires burned in the valley, smoke rose to the stars. His soldiers were exhausted, but they were still alive. Every wave the Zerath sent had been repelled. Farah came to his side. Sir, it worked. They're pulling back, Hale nodded. Not yet. The Queen is still alive. She won't stop until she realizes we're not broken. He looked toward the distant mountains. Somewhere up there, Asera watched him. Somewhere up there, she was angry and frustrated. Hale smiled faintly. And that's when it gets interesting. Above, in the flagship, Queen Asera stared at the reports of her failing forces. Hundreds of soldiers dead, her fleet partially destroyed. Her personal strike teams humiliated, her violet eyes burned. "Send the second wave," she ordered. "This human will not live to see tomorrow." But deep in the command center, one thought echoed in her mind. He is not like any other human I have faced, and I cannot predict him. Perhaps I underestimated him. The sky above Riven 3 burned with fire and smoke. Craters and shattered buildings littered the valley. The once pristine plains were now a battlefield carved by fire, plasma, and rock. Captain Marcus Hale stood at the highest ridge, his coat flapping in the wind. He surveyed the chaos below. His soldiers, exhausted but unbroken, had repelled every wave the Zerath Dominion had thrown at them. Yet despite the victories, Hale knew the Queen herself still commanded the final assault. Lieutenant Farah approached, her boots crunching against broken stone. "Sir, she's moving her flagship closer. Her ground troops are reorganizing. She's preparing another strike." Hale did not flinch. He activated a holographic map. Energy readings from hidden turrets, mines, and decoys filled the display. "Let her come," he said quietly. "Every step she takes will be hers alone. She will face exactly what she expects, and then something she doesn't." Far above, Queen Asera floated in orbit aboard the Vengeance of Stars. Her violet eyes glowed as she studied the reports. Her fleets were decimated. Her elite soldiers had been destroyed. Yet she did not retreat. Pride burned within her claws, sharper than any blade. "Prepare the final strike," she ordered. "Ground assault, orbital bombardment, every unit we have. I will end this human myself." Her generals exchanged uneasy glances. None had ever seen her like this, focused, dangerous, and unyielding. The galaxy feared her for her ruthlessness, but now she was obsessed. Hale had become more than a soldier. He was a challenge to her entire empire. Hale's forces readied themselves as the sun set, casting long shadows over the scarred land. Every ridge, every valley, every ruined building had been converted into a killing zone. He moved among his troops calmly, checking positions, coordinating defenses. "You've held them this far," he said softly to Farah. "Now we finish it. We fight like humans, together, not alone." The soldiers nodded, gripping weapons and standing taller. They did not have the numbers. They did not have the firepower. But they had will, planning, and a captain who had never lost a single step of the way. The first wave of the Queen's strike hit just after nightfall. Massive ships deployed troops in drop pods, armored tanks, and flying assault drones. The human resistance triggered every trap, channeling alien soldiers into narrow paths where mines and hidden turrets tore through them. Explosions lit the valley like lightning storms. Smoke rose to the clouds, mixing with the red glow of plasma fire. Hale's soldiers fought with precision, each move coordinated to maximize damage and minimize loss. Through the chaos, Hale moved like a shadow, precise, calm, unstoppable. Every enemy advance had a counter. Every surprise attack had a trap waiting. And all the while he studied the sky. Farah shouted, "Sir, orbital bombardment incoming." Hale pointed to a canyon lined with energy-absorbing rocks. "Lead them there. They'll think it's safe. It's not." The enemy ships fired massive plasma blasts, but the rocks funneled the energy into harmless channels, leaving the human forces untouched while detonating hidden explosives among the advancing aliens. Above the battlefield, Queen Asera descended personally into the fray. Her energy shield shimmered like a living wall, her claws cutting through any enemy that dared approach. She moved with unmatched speed and precision. Every step she took was calculated, every strike lethal. Yet even she could not escape the carefully orchestrated traps. Mines, turrets, and collapsing rocks slowed her progress. Her soldiers were cut down before they reached her. For the first time in her life, she felt frustration. She activated her personal weapon system, energy beams that could cut through stone. But Hale had anticipated this. Hidden trenches absorbed the blast and redirected it, scattering her soldiers into kill zones. Every attack she made was turned against her. Hale watched through his binoculars. His voice carried over the comm system, calm and firm. "You brought your empire to my doorstep, Your Majesty. Now you face the consequences." The Queen's violet eyes narrowed. That human dared to speak directly to her. And yet, she could not strike him. She could see him, but she could not reach him without falling into the traps. Her claws tightened on her weapon. "Impossible," she whispered. How can one man control everything? Hale smiled faintly. Because we don't fight like you do. We fight to survive. We fight to protect what matters. The battle raged for hours. Every wave of the Queen's forces was repelled, crushed, or misdirected. Her elite soldiers, once feared across the galaxy, were destroyed one by one. Hale and his team adapted continuously. Every mistake the aliens made was amplified, every weakness exploited. It was not just skill, it was understanding. He knew how they thought, how they moved, and how to manipulate them. At one point, the Queen unleashed a massive orbital cannon, intended to flatten the valley and wipe out the resistance. Hale had anticipated this. Hidden trenches and energy channels diverted the blast, creating a series of controlled detonations that destroyed the enemy units while leaving the humans untouched. Even the Queen herself could not predict the outcome. Hours later, the battlefield was silent, except for the crackling of fires and distant alarms. The Queen's forces had retreated to regroup. Her elite soldiers were gone. Her ships were damaged, and yet she remained, watching, furious and astonished. Hale walked among his troops, exhausted but steady. He looked at the horizon where the alien flagship still hovered. His soldiers cheered quietly. They had survived what seemed impossible. Farah approached him. "Sir, we did it." "They're retreating." Hale nodded. "Not yet. The Queen won't stop. She won't leave. She has pride, and pride is dangerous. But she has learned something today." Farah raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" Hale's gaze returned to the stars. Humans don't kneel. Not to gods, not to kings, not even to queens. The Queen aboard her ship received the reports. The battlefield was devastated, her troops annihilated, her strategy turned against her. Her violet eyes stared at the holographic map, blinking with red dots, dead fleets, destroyed squads, failed assaults. She stood in silence, her claws pressed against the railing of the bridge. For a moment she could not speak. For a moment, Marcus Hale's name echoed louder than any warning or threat. Her generals watched nervously. Finally, she whispered, "If all humans are like him, perhaps we were never the superior species." Her pride burned, yet beneath it was a grudging respect, born from witnessing what she had never imagined. One human, ordinary by all standards, defeating an empire through intelligence, courage, and sheer will. The Queen dismissed her council. "We will regroup," she said softly. "But the humans, they are unlike anything I expected." Back on the surface, Hale walked along the ridges of the battlefield. Smoke rose around him, but his soldiers followed without hesitation. He looked at the scorched earth, at the craters and broken machines. Victory had come at a cost, but the humans were still alive. Farah walked beside him. "Sir, they'll be back." "You know that." Hale's gaze drifted to the stars. "Yes, but they'll remember this day. They'll remember that humans will never kneel, never surrender, and every time they try to fight us, they will pay for underestimating us." He paused, looking at the scattered survivors. "We fight for more than survival. We fight because we are human. That makes us dangerous." In the weeks that followed, the Zerath Dominion retreated from Riven 3. They rebuilt their fleets and repaired their ships. But Hale's legend had already spread across the galaxy. Soldiers whispered his name with fear. The Queen herself could not speak it aloud for long, yet it haunted every plan she made. Hale did not seek glory. He returned to his soldiers, rebuilt his base, and prepared for the next battle. Humanity had survived another empire, and proved that ordinary humans could defy the impossible. Queen Asera watched from afar, her pride wounded, but her mind alive with new understanding. Marcus Hale had not just defeated her forces, he had shown her something she could not ignore, the strength of a species that refused to kneel. Her final thought, whispered in the silence of her throne room, echoed like a warning across the galaxy. The humans, they fight differently, and I will never forget it.